Do you know what else it meant? For Joseph to do what the angel commanded him? It meant he had to be a father to a boy that wasn't his biologically. Jesus knows what it means to be adopted. Jesus lived, and we don't know much about his life before he turned 30, but we know his father was not his biological father. So what did they say? Maybe what we say today, you don't know who your dad is, Jesus? It's not him. But what does that say about your mom? Jesus bore all the shame, all the challenges of being adopted. Jesus knows what it means to be adopted. Joseph knows what it means to have an adopted son. And you say, why? Why would he do that? Because of Galatians 4. It says, when the time was full, God sent forth his son that we might be adopted. Oh boy, say it's not natural for me to call out to God in prayer. It's not natural for me to call out to God as Father. Yeah, that's what it means to be adopted. It means the person that you should have called dad and mom isn't there. And through years of training and loving and relationship, you learn to call out to new parents who love you. That's not the way God made the world to work. But do you understand? Jesus lived that. Jesus knows what it means to be adopted. Do you realize how shameful that probably was? Do you realize how difficult that probably was? Unless you were adopted, you might not know. But when I read this week and knowing our story, it was like, oh my goodness. It's hard to be adopted. It's hard to be seen with parents that people go, hey, you came out of her and you don't belong to him, but he's trying to love you anyway. Well, that's got to be hard. And in one real physical way, Jesus was living the story of adoption for all who would come for thousands of years after that, who would be adopted. And he fulfills in some ways the storyline of Scripture of sons who are adopted, right? I mean, think about Moses was adopted into Pharaoh's household. You think about it, in some ways, Samuel was adopted into the household of Eli and Eli's unfaithful sons. And then all of a sudden, you get this boy, Jesus, adopted by Joseph. So that Jesus could pave the way for us to be adopted into the family of God. And you say, hey, it's not natural for me to call out to God as my father. It's hard to be adopted by God and feel like I have a good connection with him. It's really hard for me to connect with God. Hey, can I tell you something? Jesus did it perfectly. Jesus lived the adoption story perfectly. And he did it so that we could be adopted by God. And by his power in us, learn to be loved by God. I think that's the hardest part about adoption, is not just learning to love, but learning to be loved.